Before I quit these 3 healthy habits, eating in perimenopause felt like a full-time job. I was reading every single label, Googling every single symptom, and second guessing every single thing I was eating. And when I finally pulled these 3 things out, something surprising happened. Eating got so much easier. I'm Nikki, if you're new here, a nutrition and health coach for women in perimenopause, and I'm going through this myself. So today I want to show you 3 healthy habits that I quit, why that they were secretly making things so much harder for me, and what I do instead that actually makes life easier. So let's start with the first healthy habit that I had to break up with, and that was my relationship with caffeine. And it looked something like this. I would wake up and I would trudge down the stairs and I would make my coffee, hit the button on my Nespresso, and wait for my coffee to brew. And then I would add some creamer and probably more creamer than coffee. And then I was warming it up a million times. But what I noticed is that by 10 o'clock, I would find myself looking for food. And I would want another cup of coffee because I just needed to function and keep up and have, all of the energy for my meetings. But then by the afternoon, my brain was foggy and I truly couldn't focus on work. And here's why this matters actually so much in perimenopause, because when you drink coffee on an empty stomach, your body uses stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, and that helps keep you going. So in perimenopause, those stress hormones are already kind of touchy. So it can feel like anxiety or a racing mind, or like you're tired and wired, but like not actually awake. So coffee by itself can make your blood sugar just kind of go up and down all the time. Like you feel super revved up and then crashy later. And then you want more, right? Because you want that cycle to keep going. So too much or too late caffeine can actually mess with your sleep quality, even if you fall asleep fine. Perimenopause, where sleep is already kind of messed up anyway, that one habit can quietly worsen night sweats and your midnight wake ups and exhaustion the next day. So one of the things that I do now is I changed my coffee routine, and you can see more on that in this video right here. But the thing is that now I eat with my coffee, or I eat before my coffee, because coffee for me is more of a cozy feeling, not something that I have to survive in the morning. I just like the taste and I like to have my coffee. So I will typically eat my protein heavy breakfast and then have my coffee with a scoop of protein in it. But I also set a caffeine cutoff time. So I typically won't have caffeine past around 10:30 in the morning, sometimes 11, but I really try to cut it off around 10:30. And if I do want something in the afternoon, because sometimes I want something warm and cozy while I'm working or catching up with my clients, I will have a mud water or a matcha tea or decaf tea. Matcha and mud water do have a little bit of caffeine, but they also have adaptogens in them and functional mushrooms. And so the big thing for me is that they don't make me feel crashy and jittery. They don't keep me up at night, and they have such limited caffeine in it that it doesn't make a difference. So I will have one of those or a decaf tea. Sometimes I really just want the tea with the warm mug, especially in the winter. But the thing is that once I started really fixing my coffee habit, it also showed me one of my big problems. And that was that I was so underfueled that later in the day, I was just living on quick and refined carbs. And that's where habit number 2 really came in. So we talked about my caffeine hydration routine, even though coffee is so not hydrating. But for years, my breakfast was just coffee. Or sometimes I would make my coffee and then run through the drive-thru at Starbucks after I dropped my kids off. So that was a big problem. But when I finally did eat, I was starting to realize I was grabbing quick carbs. So all of these, like maybe healthy cereals, or I was just grabbing crackers, or I was grabbing my kids' leftover toast crust, or even some waffles, right? Nothing that was of substance. And then I realized that I was really starving. And part of it was because I wasn't getting the nutrition that my body actually needed. So the problem with that in perimenopause is that refined carbs like boxed cereals or muffins or like instant oatmeal and crackers, these break down into sugar super quickly and they spike your blood sugar and then they drop it fast. So that's why, we've already talked about that those swings are actually worse in perimenopause, but you see it and you feel it so much more, right? So those crashes will actually then make you crave more quick carbs and sugar. So you end up on this hamster wheel of eating and crashing. You're secretly driving belly fat and that afternoon exhaustion. And when most of your meals are built around all of these refined carbs, you're actually missing the protein and the healthy fats that your hormones really need, especially when you're in perimenopause. And that makes it harder to feel full or have energy and support things like your mood and your patience and sleep and muscle. So I didn't just cut out all the carbs, right? But I did stop having refined carbs and I stopped eating them naked. So what I mean by that is I now actually pair my carbohydrates, because you do need carbs, with protein and fat. And that might look like toast with nut butter and seeds, pasta with chicken, or a lot of times I will have something very simple. I could even do dates with some almond butter. And it's really just giving my body what it actually needs instead of just having the refined carbs that break down into sugar fast. So if you're hearing about this and you're like, okay, well, what does that actually look like? That's why I created my free guide, Healthy Swaps Made Easy. And you can grab it in the link below, but it just gives you some red flags of things to look for and some better ideas that you can swap instead. So once I stopped living on these refined carbs, so much improved, but my sweet tooth, it was still running the show. And look, I was proud of my low sugar yogurts and sugar-free creamers. And, I would always get that sugar-free pump of vanilla at Starbucks, but I always just wanted something a little bit sweet after every meal. And that's when I realized that habit number 3 was sneaking in, and that was around my healthy sugar swaps. Look, I thought I was being so disciplined by doing the low sugar things, right? And the sugar-free things. But what I didn't realize is that this is a huge problem, especially in perimenopause. So the reason that this is a big problem in perimenopause, and honestly just in general, is because regular added sugar keeps your blood sugar bouncing up and down all the time. Okay. And we've already talked about how those roller coaster swings show up in your mood and your energy and the brain fog, right? But also that stubborn belly fat that just kind of seems to come out of nowhere. And a lot of your low sugar or sugar-free products actually use artificial or very intense sweeteners. And they really don't give your body real fuel, but they keep your brain actually craving more. And it makes it harder to feel satisfied and trust your hunger and actually know when you're full. So both the constant sugar and lots of diet or light or low fat, that can actually mess with your sleep. It messes with your digestion. It causes inflammation and all of these things that your perimenopausal body is already working harder to manage. So it has to work even harder. So what feels like a smart swap can actually keep your system on edge. And it's why I tell people I would rather see them have a little bit of real sugar or than something diet with artificial sweeteners, because artificial sweeteners have so many things that can disrupt your gut. But here's the thing. If you do look for no sugar added, then I want you to look for something that is pure stevia leaf or monk fruit. And not pure stevia leaf with erythritol, but make sure that it's pure and it's got the stevia leaf. So the other thing that you can do is, instead of buying the, sugar added yogurts, you buy a plain Greek yogurt and then you drizzle your own honey or add a few, chocolate chips to it. And that will also help, making sure that you're not adding all of those extra sweet things. In terms of drinks, I definitely avoid all of the diet sodas, drinks, waters, whatever, because of all of the added artificial sweeteners, right? One, we just talked about how it keeps your brain looking for more sweet. But what I do is I look for things like carbonated water, and I will add my own citrus, or for coffee, because I know this is a big question that I get, is I do a scoop of protein powder and I mix it with a little bit of water, and then I pour my coffee and I don't have anything else in it. And so that gives me that sweetness, that creamy texture, but it doesn't give me all of the sugar. So at the end of the day, when I really stopped and I thought about breaking up with all of these healthy habits, I also realized I wasn't thinking about food all the time anymore. And that's when eating really truly started feeling simple again. So the 3 healthy habits that I completely quit were having caffeine on an empty stomach, right? Letting that be my breakfast because we know that that was keeping me wired and anxious and then having all the brain fog. But then also it was leading to me grabbing all of those refined carbs without any real nutrition. And I didn't want to be doing that and being starving and having that roller coaster all day long. But then also relying on that low sugar and low fat diet drink cycle, right? Because that was also keeping my sweet tooth loud and making sure that I continued to have cravings. So, no, I didn't become a different person overnight and I didn't suddenly, start eating perfectly. But what I did do is I started making those small shifts that my perimenopausal body actually wanted. And when I started doing that, it made eating feel so much simpler. And honestly, I enjoyed things more. So if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I get it, but what do I actually eat? Grab the free Healthy Swaps Made Easy guide because you can use a lot of these swaps right away to start plugging into your week. And if you're thinking to yourself, I don't just want ideas, I want a system and some support to stick with this because accountability is huge, I'm actually opening spots for my Real Food Made Easy collective in March. And it's for women in perimenopause who want food to feel simple and sustainable and exciting, but not feel like another job on top of everything else that you're already doing. So if you want to be the first to know when doors open, I want you to hop on the wait list using the link below, and I'll send you all the details. And if this helped you see some of your own patterns, the next question is usually, okay, so what do I actually put on my plate? And I have a video that walks you through exactly that. It's about what happens when you're not eating enough protein after 40 and how to fix it with a really simple framework. You'll see it on the screen right here. So tap that next, and I'll show you how to build meals that actually keep your hormones calm and your body full.